The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.
Today's episode of the Silly Goose Gang Podcast is brought to you by our friend Waqar Rasheed from Titan Sports over in Pakistan. He is the manufacturer of this wonderful William Wallace rash guard that he made for us. And if you want to go check him out to get some stuff made, you can get him at thetitansports.com and on Instagram at Titan Sportswear. So definitely go check him out if you want some stuff manufactured.
That's right. Okay, so we are back in episode 69 of the Silly Goose Gang podcast, and we're delighted to be joined today by Mike Yarborough of Wolf and Iron and Rustic and Main, to make that very important distinction as I got it wrong. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, guys, I'm glad to be here. This is going to be a good conversation.
Yeah. Now, just because Ali said your surname very Scottish, how do you pronounce it in America?
No, you know what? If I could pronounce it just like that every time, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yarborough. No, that's great.
Yeah. It's
some
one
people
of those things.
There's apparently there's some Yarboroughs with an extra O out there. So I don't know, but there's all kinds of spellings and variations of it. But yeah, Yarborough is how I roll with it.
It's because obviously I remember, oh God, now 10 years ago, maybe longer. I remember Eminem played at our Scottish Music Festival, and he came on stage and he was nowhere near the capital, but he said, "Hey, what's up, Edinburgh?" And everybody's going, "Well,
instead of Edinburgh,
yes, it's Edinburgh, not Edinburgh." So it's just one of those, the last name. But yeah, man, we're delighted to have you here. It's nice to see the Old Glory in the background there.
That's right,
hanging up. It's like the Union Jack. I think it's a beautiful flag. Ali doesn't like it.
Yeah, there's the Union Jack. We weren't original in the red, white, and blue. For some reason we were just like, that works. And obviously there's a lot of other countries and a lot of variations on that color theme, but we still like it. Proud of it.
Yeah, definitely. There's seems to be I don't want to dive straight into to be anything political, but America is a strange place at the minute, and it's cool. It's cool when you see somebody who has just had an American flag saying, "Hey, I'm proud to be American."
Yeah, for sure. No, it's strange for me because I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, and it was so pro-America, and it was like, we had this common, we had a lot of music coming out at the time. There were a lot of movies that were very pro-America military, all this other kind of stuff. And to go from that shift all the way over to where we, most people are still very proud to be Americans. Most Americans are happy to be Americans, but there's just a lot of anti-American kind of rhetoric out there that we're just constantly, dealing with. And so when you see somebody walking around town and they've got an American t-shirt on, or they got something that says proud to be an American, it's almost like that person's a rebel these days. Like, even though it should just be the most normal thing, that there is. So
it seems strange because I think we're all round about the same age.
Yeah.
And when we were in America as kids, like in the late 90s, like there was American flags everywhere. It was very much to be American, it was you were proud to be an American. Whereas now it seems like, I don't know if it's just the social media impact on things where you see you have way more information, because if we grew up, I grew up in the 90s, and there was no social media, so you didn't have access to so much information. So I don't know if it's that side of things where we now just see everything, or it is more I don't know if it's because the same thing's happening. I'm sure Ali would agree, the same thing is happening over here.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
definitely,
you can't really be proud to be Scottish, British. It's and I don't understand it.
I think some of it is this we've kind of moved from a generation where people were very tough, very resilient, very much responsible for themselves, and they had that kind of mindset, and they would have never ever considered themselves a victim of some kind. Even if they really were truly a victim, they would have never paraded that as like, the banner of their life. But for people to really buy into this kind of victim mentality, whether it's a group, a business, a nation, whatever it happens to be, they have to look at it through the lens of the sins that is committed, the wrong that's been done, rather than the good that it stands for. Like the American flag stands for honor and justice and sacrifice and so many great, wonderful things. But when they see the flag, some people, when they see the flag, they go, oh, to be an American means slavery. It means capitalism, in some kind of bad way. It means all these negative things instead of actually what the flag represents and what it calls us to. And same is true for every country. Every flag has a noble kind of undertone or a noble meaning behind it. But, you can't, if you were looking for something that was higher and something that elevated you, that's not really going to keep you in that victim mindset. And so the people out there that are perpetuating these ideas of anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, all these kinds of things, it's people that are trying to wear people down and make them think about themselves as a society of victims rather than a society of free people that are, can go out and become and do.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I have very little struggle, very little wrong in life where they have to start fabricating things. It just seems, I remember when, being a kid, and I can remember, parents saying, "Oh, the world's going mad." I feel like now it genuinely is like, I don't know how many times a day or a week, me and Ali will be sending things to each other, and we're saying we live in this is a simulation. This cannot. How did we get to this point? It just seems like everything is. It seems like we've never more than ever. We've never needed to hit the stop button and say, "Okay, everybody, can we just be reasonable?" And it's to say anything now, slightly from and I was going to say controversial, but it's not even things that aren't controversial.
No.
And now people are going, well, that's ridiculous. You're just going, what? No.
Yeah.
How? It's insane. I don't know how we've got here. Yeah, sorry, I'm going on a little rant there.
Our son Aiden asked us. He's in his 20s now, and he asked my wife and I, his mom. He said, "Has everything always been this crazy? And maybe now that I'm just kind of getting to adulthood, I'm seeing it and I'm recognizing it." And we said, "No, it's never been like this. The things that Summer and I, his mom, the things that we're really concerned about, and the things that that we're seeing going on right now, it's the kind of stuff that like our grandparents kind of talked about, like, oh, the world's going to hell and everybody's becoming weak, and it was that kind of stuff where like only old people talked about it. But now it's something like us, we talk about it, our age, our generation, and we're seeing stuff that we've never seen before on such a scale that we've never seen before. And some of that is social media. A lot of it is the media portrayal of things. But we are definitely in a time where like the conspiracies are coming true type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's more obvious now than it's ever been. And, but at the same time, I find it really exciting because there is that sense of like, now we find out what people really believe. We find out who really wants to just coast along in the easy world and who actually wants to put up a bit of a fight and make sure things stay on the right, on the right path. Yeah,
I just I said something almost identical, Mike, to our friend Fletch in LA, and I can't even remember what he posted on Instagram on his story, and I had said it was something about America, something that was happening in California, LA, and it was like, I don't know whether I'm terrified because America, which is essentially, the symbol of the West. So what happens in America affects us directly.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'm terrified of what's happening in America because there's some things, it might have been something about Joe Biden wanting to give families separated at the border $450,000. And I was like, but I'm also encouraged because you see so many people going, this is insane. Like, why, there's people on the streets, there's homeless veterans. There's a million things that could be done without giving people who have entered the country illegally. Why would you give them $500,000? Like, and but seeing people now starting to speak up about it and saying, well, maybe we've went far enough this way. Maybe we need to go a little bit this way now.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
And it was just following on from that, Chris. We also, I'm sure you saw it, Mike. I suppose the second White House press secretary, not the main one who was down ill. They had their kind of backup in, and she was asked directly, are you going to give $450,000 to people that immigrate to America legally? And she had said, well, why would we do that? And the reporter said, but you're giving $450,000 to people that are flooding across the border illegally. And she was like, I don't understand your question. He said, well, do you not think if people are coming here going through the right channels in the right process, they deserve the $450,000 to set them up for life? And she was genuinely puzzled, like, I don't get what you mean.
Yeah.
And I like to think of myself as a relatively rational person. I'm like, well, you can't have scenario A and then completely discount scenario B when someone's going through the correct process, but you're not going to reward them or give them the same start as someone who's saying, and I appreciate people are fleeing from sometimes horrific situations, but still, if people are coming across that and you're going, here's $450,000, come on down. The people that come normally.
Yeah. And the real scary thing there is that, you and I, and most of our friends, most of our people in our circle, and I would say most Americans and people, they understand that. Like they would go, that this doesn't make sense. But there will come a time, and we may be a generation or two from it. There will come a time where, when we try to promote a rational idea like that, we're going to get that deer in the headlights kind of look, like, I don't even understand the question. I can't understand why what I'm doing is wrong. We're so steeped in, like, capitalism and freedom and so many other kind of doctrines, and and America still has a lot of Christian values and stuff that are just part of our culture. But there's a generation that's coming up they're going to be very easy to manipulate into where words like truth, words like capitalism, words like I don't know, self-reliance and stuff like that. All these things are going to get manipulated and changed to mean something different, so that when you and I, when we're in our 50s and 60s and we're trying to tell the younger generation this is wrong, they're going to have a really hard time even understanding the concept of why something is right, why something is wrong. And and I think that's the real danger that we're up against these days.
Yeah, there's there's I don't know, with the self-loathing, the pulling that, this, the statue thing, and this is relevant because I just heard on I think it would have been on the way to jiu-jitsu actually the other day, that in Edinburgh they're going to pull down some statues or rename some streets because they had a connection to slavery.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, but don't we need to learn from that and go, okay, it's I understand why people would be upset about it, but you think, well, do we eliminate Hitler from history?
Yeah, right.
No, you go, this guy was an insane person, and this is why he was wrong. But you don't. Why would you? It beggars belief. Really.
There's all these where I grew up. There's a lot of Civil War battlefields, and I don't really know the history of the battles. I mean, when I was growing up, they were just there, and now they've got signs up and stuff. But there were men that died on that field. Good guys, bad guys. Or just men in general, just fought and died. Some were fighting for the South, some were fighting for the North, and but whatever the case is. But for me, growing up, it was like this is like a historical place. Like this is a place where terrible things happened. Brothers essentially, may have killed each other. But it's also something that I want to be protected, so that I know that I can go there and see this happened. This is real. This is, I mean, maybe if there was something like Hitler Street, maybe we rename it, I don't know. But, it's, I think the bigger issue is that it's part of that movement of just rewriting history and trying to get people to not think. They just don't want to think about stuff.
Yeah, it's like rewriting history is something that, you think of, like ISIS do that.
Yeah, they go tear down monuments.
Yeah, we don't, because I thought of this today because I passed. So the Battle of Bannockburn site in Scotland, it's not far from us, where the English and the Scots fought. And you think, well, would we take that down because, we beat the English and loads of English people? Would we remove that?
Yeah.
because English people had died, and it's it's kind of anti-English, because there was a fight, men got stabbed. No, you celebrate it as heritage.
Yeah.
And go, okay, this is why we don't want to go to battle again, but it's part of your heritage. Why would you? It just seems that's insane, but other stuff isn't, and it seems, and it's almost you almost feel nervous about even saying these things, because in case somebody goes, oh, you said you must be a racist or a bigot, or you go, no, this is common sense. Like,
yeah.
And you do get a little bit nervous when you have to. I mean, I don't know if you feel the same in America, Mike, but you do feel nervous about saying certain things. In case
well, sure. It used to be that you had communities of people that you could talk to that share same ideas or something like that. But now, you're not supposed to talk. I don't know how it is in Scotland, but like in America, you're not supposed to talk about politics in church. You're not supposed to talk about it at work. You're not supposed to talk about it at family gatherings. You're not supposed to talk about it in public places in general. People kind of look over their shoulders to see if it's okay to talk about stuff, and that's not healthy. We've got to be able to say what we think, because the truth is the guy who's sitting next to you at work probably shares a lot of the same values you do, but maybe not exactly. And you guys need to be able to talk about those things openly without, exactly. calling each other names. And that's, people only practice it on the internet, which is just terrible.
Yeah. So I had, and I suppose an ex-friend, but I don't hold any grudges, but when, when Facebook and Twitter and everybody decided to ban Donald Trump from all the platforms, I'd have said on Instagram, like, if you don't understand where this goes, I mean, you're stupid. Yeah. And a girl that I know messaged me, and she went insane, and she went on this massive rant about Donald Trump's a racist, and he said this, and he said that. I said, look, and I'm trying to forget that. Who's making that decision? Yeah. He didn't actually say what you think he said.
Yep.
They're just making it up, and you can't just ban people who you disagree with. You have to have a conversation and go, okay, Donald, this is why you're wrong. And that's why you said, you can't just go, nope, you're not allowed to speak anymore. Mm-hmm. And she went crazy. And then, in fact, I sent Ali the WhatsApp message, because I sent her a WhatsApp message and saying, blocking somebody from Instagram who believes in the freedom of speech for everybody is the most unintentionally hilarious thing ever. Good luck with everything. And sent it. It's just like, you don't understand. No. I'm not saying, he should be promoted or he shouldn't be promoted. I'm just saying you have to really protect that idea that, listen, we might really disagree on things, but we have to be able to talk about them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing the thing that you think you're not doing. Like, it's crazy.
And people don't really see the power of self-correcting. That, like, if people really didn't agree with what Donald Trump was saying, they could unfollow Donald Trump, unfollow the people that follow him. And eventually that's going to kind of correct itself. Like, either he's going to lose so many people that, he stops saying what he's saying, if he was saying it. But, there's a power there in kind of letting the, things self-correct. But people don't want to take that responsibility. They want to say it's somebody else's job to prevent someone from talking, or to prevent a particular flag from flying, or to prevent a monument from standing, those kinds of things, instead of taking that personal responsibility, which is actually a very American thing. Like, we should just be steeped in personal responsibility, but it's like it's something that hasn't really been, made an appearance in a generation or two now. And it's just getting worse really quickly.
I mean, in terms of America, I mean, if somebody violently disagrees with Donald Trump, or they want to shut him up, there was lots of platforms where presidential debates where they had the platform to point out why he was stupid.
Yeah,
it didn't.
Yep.
They had Joe Biden and didn't let him speak to anybody. So you go, okay, well, I haven't seen anybody who's, I watched Tulsi Gabbard, who's brilliant. She's super cool.
Yeah.
And she just absolutely annihilated Kamala Harris. And you go, oh, you could just do that to somebody by, this is the facts. This is what you've done.
Right.
But nobody did that to him. They just went, no, you just have to stop speaking, which to me just makes you go, okay, so what's the play here? Because this doesn't seem reasonable. This just seems like you're desperate to shut him up, but you're not actually saying why.
Yeah.
You know, it just seems crazy.
And that same mindset is what's taking place right now with the vaccine stuff, is that people want a solution. They don't want to investigate if it's a good solution or not a good solution. And they don't want to hear opposing arguments about it. You know, they want everybody to be on board to do the same thing because that's what they believe is right. Whether you think it's right or not, it shouldn't negate somebody else's freedom to think differently. And that's what they want to suppress. You know, whenever there's a different type of thought about something, they don't want people to go down that road and begin to question things. And and when I say they, you know, it's the politicians, it's the media, it's, you know, the people that are more progressive, and it's, you know, that same kind of mindset shows up. But the other thing is that, and I heard this from a friend of mine, it just proves true time and time again, is that the left, they eat their own, you know. So when they start shutting down the free speech of some person that, you know, maybe somebody opposes, eventually it's going to work their way to where, like, you know, that person, that lady who you're having a conversation with, somebody that she follows is going to say something, and she's going to be like, I don't understand why they would ban this person. And it's like, it's because that person decided to actually speak up, you know, on something. And it may not be politics. It may be something like the vaccine or maybe something else. But, you know, when people start to speak out of turn, they're going to get banned. And that's one of the things that we're seeing these days is, the question I think a lot of people have is, what do we do about that? Like, I've seen like 1776 United. I think you guys got Ian Smith coming up on your podcast. Maybe I could be wrong about that. Yeah.
That might be tricky because he's having some issues just now, and it's hard to get a hold of him. But we're really fingers crossed. But,
But he's one of those guys that's standing up for something, and he's getting shut down, right? And so the question is, what do you do about that? You know, what are the next kind of what's the alternatives?
So in terms of like sorry, Ali, just because you were talking about vaccine there. So Ali's vaccinated because that was the best thing for him to do, because he has some like asthma and stuff, and I am not. And it didn't even start out as like I'm not getting vaccinated. You know, I simply got a letter to get vaccinated the day before an iron distance triathlon. So I went, okay, that's not going to happen. Yeah. And then I'm not going to do it the month after because your body takes a long time to recover. And then since then, you know, there's some stuff starts coming out and you start going, okay, just wait a minute here. And then it's like, okay, well, let me, you know, and there's some more stuff starts coming out and then you start going, okay, you know, and I just sent something to Ali just now, like, there was a British doctor had said that, you know, the UK had fuddled its Pfizer results. There's something just came out saying they did the same in Texas. They've screwed results, and the results are not what they say they are. That, you know, it really isn't all that. You don't, if you're vulnerable. But then again, it's like, I'm not saying to Ali, oh my God, you're so stupid, you've took a vaccine. It's like, cool, man, if you think it's the best thing to do, take it. Yeah.
But you can still be friends with Chris, even though Chris is like, 100%. I'm not sure about this thing, right? That's how like adults 100%. Treat each other. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's not the only thing. Me and Chris disagree fundamentally on, like, politically as well. You know, we're on opposite sides of several spectrums on that respect. But, you know, it's still an asshole. But
obviously I'm correct. But
but like you say, Mike, and I think it goes back to what you said, is that growing up, and it certainly is the case in Scotland, as you seem to have said it is in America, you're kind of told to an extent from an early age, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. But they're the two probably biggest touchstone subjects that if someone starts talking about it, most people have a very strong opinion on both those subjects, one way or another, whether they are completely anti-politics and don't want to talk about it, or they're very pro-politics, or they're very anti-religious, or very pro-religious. People tend not to be quite neutral on those topics. And I think that's what we've lost over time, is the ability to say, like, say, I decided to get the vaccine. I have 3 kids. One of my oldest son, he decided to get it. My youngest son, who's 17, said, I'm 17, I'm fit, I'm not getting it. Yeah. Cool. I'm okay with that. Whereas some of his friends have been forced by their parents to get the vaccine, even though they're 17, 18-year-old, okay, still teenagers, but young adults heading into adulthood. Logan's made the decision. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I train quite a lot. The chances of me getting any real serious side effects of it are slim to none. I'm going to let my body do what my body does.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Crack on with that.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that's when we talk about the freedom for people to make those decisions and the inability, though, to have conversations that different. One of the challenges is that, and this is something that social media has not done very well. Instagram, Facebook, none of them have done this well, is that they've never taught people to actually how to have a conversation. And even because we've avoided these subjects like, politics and, religion and now, health stuff, because we've avoided those, we just show up with our opinion that we've been keeping in our head for, the last 10 years or whatever, instead of learning how to actually ask questions. And that's how you have a conversation with somebody. Because like, if you got the vaccine, I'd be like, Allie, why'd you get the vaccine? Tell me your mindset, what was going on. And then you would tell me your story. And then I would tell you some of my thoughts. And then we would kind of go back and forth. But what you get on Facebook and then sometimes in real life is that people just tell you what they think. And that's as far as they know how to go. They really don't know how to have an actual conversation where they're, back and forth and respectfully disagreeing on things. That's a lost art. And I think that's something that we got to bring back.
So I had, again, it was on Instagram. I posted something recently and I was angry at the time. I normally don't post things, that are a little controversial, but I think it was to do with it. They want to extend, because in Scotland now you have a vaccine passport. You can't go to, not that I'm going to nightclubs, but you can't go to nightclubs or large indoor gatherings of more than 500 people without a vaccine passport. The Scottish government wanted to expand that, and I'm saying this is crazy. We now know as a fact that the vaccine doesn't stop you getting it or spreading it. That's not controversial. That's just factual. What is a vaccine passport? What does it do other than control people?
Yep.
A girl that I know from she's up in Aberdeen now. She goes, "Oh, I love you, but you post some shite." And I went, "Explain to me what I've just said. That's shite." And she went, "Oh, well, your vaccine thing for one." And I went, "That's not an explanation.
No.
Explain it. I'm asking. Tell me why I'm wrong." And you can't. You've just said, "It's rubbish." And then she went off. So I go, okay, that's not a conversation. That's just you spouting off your opinion. Yep. And you haven't done it very well.
Yeah. So, no, not only that, but it's difficult. That's a really difficult thing to do. Even if she wanted to explain it to you why it was wrong or whatever, like you got to sit there and think about it, type it out. It's not like this. It's not like having a conversation. That's something where I think we just need to realize either social media just sucks at this and we just need to just all be purely entertainment, or we got to be used to, they have to change the format up a little bit to where we can actually have a conversation back and forth and it's a little bit more organic, because right now it feels like I'm a robot talking to a machine that's talking to somebody else on the other end and translating for me. And it's just not, it doesn't feel like
one of the things that we have said multiple times, Mike, is that it helps a lot when you can look into a man's eyes, so you can see really what's going on. So when when Ali was saying we disagree on a lot of things politically, so we the things that we agree on, and I'm confident you'll agree, is we agree on a strong military, law and order. Really should control borders to some respect. You have to control who's coming in and out and figuring out what's going on there. But we also agree on things like social care. Mm-hmm. If people aren't able to work or they're out of work, we should look after them. So these are all things you go, those are all real reasonable things.
Yeah.
People, if somebody just shouts at you about why you're wrong about this, some people will say, some crazy people will say, there shouldn't be any immigration at all. And you go, that doesn't work. We need to bring in good people. But that, unemployed Lithuanian guy with a violent record, we don't,
not a good fit.
We don't need them. Like, that's silly.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, so, should we look after, as all countries do, I guess, we have a hub of homeless veterans. Yeah. Can we look after those guys? They fought for the country. And we help them. Is there a way we can help them? And same as somebody who's unable to work. They've got an injury or they have a disability. Yeah, let's help those guys. Really, let's help them. Let's do more for those people. But everything gets lost in the noise of, as you say, 140 characters, or somebody who just doesn't know how to formulate a conversation, and it's all done electronically, and you can't look at somebody and go, yeah, I like what he's saying. He made that point. And it's it makes a big difference to do it in this format to have a reasonable conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, another little rant that was going on there. I go on a couple of those a podcast.
I know. Talking about the conversations, Mike, and you mentioned a few times about how, and I think me and Chris are of the opinion as well, that social media, while it was potentially a great idea, maybe hasn't continued along that trend for those various reasons. You can't get context from a message, you can't get tone from a message, etc., etc. So you've kind of been quite intentional about it and started to move away from those podcasts to the point that you've actually opened up your own kind of online community, haven't you?
Yeah, we got something called the Foundry, and we kicked it off in August with a kind of our alpha team to test it out. And then now we've got about just a little over 200 guys signed up. And
awesome.
And the goal is, and the way the Foundry works, by the way, is so phase one is there's an app, and then there's also the online way you can do it. You can do it from your desktop if you wanted to, but you kind of join at what looks like a social media platform, but it's really structured more like an online community. So you can actually go in there and you can choose the groups that you want to be a part of. And there's not all this crazy noise of trying to sell people stuff. And, it's a very structured and a very intentionalized kind of way of doing online communities. And so the first phase for us is really to kind of bring guys in there and set the tone for the culture and how those conversations are going to go. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is actually having, when guys first come on, is actually having just like, they'll watch a little video and it basically will say like, here's how you communicate online. Here's like the way you do these things. A lot of that stuff should just be part of the culture, or like how we do things. But if you're not teaching people, nobody's ever going to learn. And so even though like social media or an app doesn't give you the ability to see like eyeball to eyeball and all these expressions, there are ways that you can communicate in a kind of like a more tell me more kind of, atmosphere. Like, I want to know what you mean, or tell me more about that. There's ways that you can kind of let people know that, hey, look, I'm not being against you right now. I just have questions, or I'm not sure I agree with that. Those kinds of things. But we have to be intentional about that kind of stuff when as we build a community. If otherwise people are just going to bring over the bad habits, and it's just going to end up being another, bad place. And then phase two will be something we call guilds, and the guilds will actually be men, butts in seats, guys, sitting around a table and studying together, growing together, like human beings are supposed to do.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. It's a real good idea. Do you have like an idea of how big you want to grow that thing, or do you not want to get too big in case it gets a little bit crazy? Or
yeah, so my thought is there has to be a sense of scalability where so if I'm a guy and I join the Foundry, let's say 2 years from now, I might want to only join the groups that are specific to like my state or my area. So like maybe there's a hunting group, but I don't want to, maybe I want to join like the everybody's in it hunting group that's got like 2,500 guys in there or something, but I don't, but I really want to focus on the guys that are close to me. And I think that's really where for us is going to be where we're going to kind of control that scale. So there may be, 10,000 guys that end up being on this platform, but they're going to come in and know, like, I'm not going to jump into the room that has 10,000 guys in it. That's just going to be a bunch of noise. I've experienced that already on, every social media platform. Mm-hmm. I'm really going to be intentional about, why am I here? Why am I showing up? What does this mean for me? And they may join 2 or 3 groups. And my guess, I've kind of talked a little bit about this, I think, on another podcast, but I think the future of social media or these online communities is going to be that people join these smaller groups that they want to be a part of. And somehow all that gets aggregated to like a feed that we can all see. Kind of like how, the smart TVs do now, where like you may have a Google TV subscription or Amazon or a Hulu or, HBO Max, whatever. And it just kind of shows you like heads up, like, here's all the things that are going on, take your pick. And I think we're going to have something like that for social media where you could be a part of the Silly Goose Gang group, with your guys on app. And,
like it.
And the Foundry and the, whatever, I'm sure Jocko will have something, whoever else.
Yeah.
You could be a part of these 5 or 6, 10, whatever different groups or apps that you want to be a part of. And they just kind of get aggregated to some other, central feed. And I think that's how we're going to get away from the control that, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those guys have right now.
Yeah.
We've got to, get smaller and get a lot more intentional about what we're doing.
Yeah. So how much, like, in terms of your, what you're saying with the small groups, how much does the way you want to structure it, because I know you're a man of faith, I know you're a Christian man, so how much does that play a part in it? Because, me and Ali have said many times and many times on the podcast that, we like to go to, we both do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. People like to do CrossFit and stuff, and that in some way for people who aren't people of faith has replaced going to the church, because that was the thing that people did, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. And I think that, in some respect, I think that, maybe it's missing in life because people don't have a place to gather with decent people just following a decent guideline.
Yeah.
So how much does that play on your in your group?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that I do with the guys when they first join is I give them I send them an automated email, and I outline the values, and these are my values, and I say, look, I'm not going to start every podcast episode or every post with like a chapter and verse, but I'm a Christian, and these are the things that I believe. And so you need to know that, like, this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about and dealing with, and it's going to come up here. So if you're anti-religious, it's not a good fit for you. If you're anti-Christian, if you're anti, this is not going to be a good fit for you. And I think that's key, because like when we all jumped into like Facebook, Instagram, all this stuff, we thought, oh, it's just a place to share information. It's just going to be fun to connect with these different groups. And then we got kind of blindsided when they were like, oh, by the way, we're going to shut you down if you're not a conservative. We're going to shut you down if you talk about certain things. And, that's as much as possible, we've got to avoid that. And so I guess, for me, it's letting people know this is what I believe. So if you want to be a part of this group, you don't have to toe that line, but you need to be aware of, like, this is what I'm going to talk about. And then as far as like building guys up, yeah, absolutely. I think faith is a critical component there, because I think guys, those, like we talked about, the questions about politics and religion and those kinds of things, ultimately that gets right at the heart of what people really desire to ask, those big questions. Why am I here? What's this all about? What's the purpose behind everything? And we've got to have a place where it's expected to ask those big questions and have those big discussions. And we need to have, I think there has to be somebody who tells us, like, this is what my perspective is going to be on that, ahead of time to some degree.
Yeah, it's I've been thinking about this more and more recently about, the church, because, I went through a stage of thinking, the whole thing was a bit silly. And then you get a little bit older and you start going, you see the way the world's going, and you kind of go, maybe just people, like, I mean, what's wrong with just having, solid morals?
Yeah.
And just, just being a good human being, like, it's like people have lost this, if you look at the 10 Commandments, you go, yeah, that's not a bad list. It's not a bad 10
Right.
things to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not bad at all.
Froze up.
Yeah, it did freeze up a little bit. I don't know if it's me or if it's Chris. Can you guys see me?
No, I think Chris has just froze up. Yeah, but as he's rightly saying, Mike,
This is the devil.
there
This
is,
the devil
and I
at work
think
here.
that idea. Yeah, the minute Chris
Satan has
mentions the
gotten,
commandments,
Chris
he
is in
freezes
here.
up.
He's getting ready to talk about Jesus. I felt it, and then boom, I knew it.
It came in and knocked him out. But I do think that's a massive thing that's missing in a lot of men's lives, is that positive male, role models, peer group that just doesn't seem to exist unless you, I suppose it comes back to words you've used quite a few times, Mike, that intentional and intentionality. You have to intentionally go out and look for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall in your lap, even with social media and the ability to interact with, millions of people worldwide. You still have to go and look for, number one, a group, and number two, as you're saying, the right fit, because that can cause a massive issue as well if it's not the right fit.
No, 100%. And it's got to be the right fit. And that's why you want to be upfront about, hey, this is what this group believes. This is what our values are. And so that the guys who do show up, they're not disrupting things too much. It's not so that you create like an echo chamber where like we all think the same way, but you got to have some semblance of shared values. It's got to be where, like, if you and I are going to disagree on something, we're not disagreeing on like the fundamentals of what it means to be a man, or those kinds of things. We're maybe disagreeing on some of the details about how we might approach something versus something else, and that's great. That's what we want. But if it's like right now, what we're getting in social media world is people who have completely, or it seems like, a really opposing opinions that are just duking it out in public, and it's not helpful. It's not fruitful. So you gotta have some kind of baseline to start from.
Definitely. And what I've noticed as well, and again, I don't know if it's sort of similar in America, because obviously with politics, with you having essentially the two-party system, in Britain we have a few more, but it still is essentially a two-party system. You've got the Conservatives and the Labour Party. We've got the Scottish National Party up in Scotland that are kind of replaced as the main party. But things have seemed to have swung so far left that I almost get classed as right wing, whereas I consider myself to be more centre left.
Yeah.
But I'm just not so far left where everything's swung that by default I'm more to the right than the mainstream media are portraying. And people, you must be really right wing because, as Chris said, I think we should have some kind of border control. Or you must be a racist then. I do think there should be that. Do you know? And I've kind of been pushed that, well, am I right wing? Well, no, I know I'm not, because I'm not the other side. I'm centre left, if anything. And I think that's what you're saying.
And you have these, and a lot of people in America have this as well. This is where the two-party system doesn't really serve people, because if you have a varying degrees of like where you believe certain things, even more, like you said, like, you believe that we should have border security and we should, control those things. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you are far right, but it may mean that you have an opinion that's different from what the party, on the left or whatever is espousing. Well, who's your candidate? Who's the person out there that you choose to do? And I don't know how we get away from this two-party thing. Here in America, we have libertarians that keep trying to run like the worst people in the world. Like they just look weird. I don't know, but they, I think we've got to have something. I would love to get to where it's a partyless system and a person just runs and they say, this is what I believe. Do you believe these things? If you do, vote for me. Here's my experience.
Yeah.
That'd be so
totally. Yeah. 100%. Me and Chris have said that even in Britain with our, as you say, we've also got things like the Liberal Democrats that have maybe 20 or 30 representatives in the main House of Parliament down in London, the Green Party. And we said it'd be lovely, or it'd be ideal, kind of what you're saying, if there was a party called the Common Sense Party.
Yeah.
Because every party has something that you go, actually, I really like that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the rest of it's terrible, so I can't vote for them. And actually, I like 2 or 3 of that. But as you say, the person's just weird and there's no way I'm casting my vote for them.
Yeah.
Or, they're a party that believe in, whatever, but there's one piece of the policy you go, ooh, can I have that? And it'd be great if there was a common sense party or a menu and you could go, right, I want that one, that bit and that bit. Put it all together. We're pretty in a good place here.
Well, and I don't know how, because of where we are with technology these days, we could actually have a pre-election, as in Americans or, Scotsmen or Scottish, I don't know what you guys call yourselves, but, the people who would go out and vote, we could actually just say, here's what I would like to see in a candidate. Here's a list of 100 things. I'm going to choose all the pieces and I'm going to move a sliding scale as to like, this is really important or not important. Right. And that just goes up to some database. And so that, it's like, hey, here's who America wants. Let's go find this guy, of the candidates that we have out there who meets these criteria. There's all kinds of stuff we could be doing differently, but, will we see it in our lifetime? I don't know.
I don't think so either. It's funny as well, as I said, I've got my oldest son, a couple of years younger than your son. He's 18, so he's cast in the Scottish elections. You can vote from 16. In the main UK elections, you have to be 18. So he's cast his vote at Scottish elections, but never voted yet in a UK general election because he wasn't old enough the last run through. But he's got really heavily into politics, and it's quite interesting to see, because obviously he's grown up. Probably similar to your sons, he's grown up in a social media world.
Yeah,
he's had social media since high school. He's grown up as a teenager with the exposure to social media and all the different things that I certainly didn't have growing up as a teenager back in the the late 90s. And it's interesting to see where he pulls his points of view from and how it's influenced by by me, by my wife, his mum, you know, by his friends, by social media. It's interesting to see him kind of starting to grow his own political personality.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing now because you bring up that he's 16, and then here in America it's 18. You can vote, but the thing is, most men these days don't mature until we're about 25 or 27 years old. Our frontal cortex doesn't really mature until we're older. It wasn't always that way. If you go back, there are still people who these days, because of how they've grown up, their frontal cortex is actually much more mature. And so they're a more mature human being at the age of 18 than somebody else who's 25 years old. But, I do worry about the fact that we've got, almost a decade of somebody's life they can vote. But for the remainder of their life, they may not think that way. They may actually look back at that decade of their life and go, wow, I was stupid. I can't believe I voted for you. Because we don't mature until so much later. So there's a lot of things around this whole, the voting, the age, the system itself that is due for a change. And, I think the best thing we can do, on a ground level is we've got to raise our sons and daughters to be more mature than the average person, and then hope for the best, and I think that's about as good as we can do.
Definitely. It's all you can do, isn't it? It's hope. And I know I've listened to one of your, it was either one of your, I think you call them Truck Talk Thursdays or your Foundry Fridays. It was one of the ones. And you were talking about, and I remember it as well, because I mean, I was born in 1978. I'm 43 years old now.
Same here.
Oh, awesome. So I got very similar, obviously, sort of exposure to things. And in the 80s, certainly, American culture started to come across to Britain. Like, I'm a massive Chicago Bears fan because of Super Bowl 20 and the Super Bowl Shuffle and Walter Payton and William Perry and Dan Hampton, all those great guys, Jim McMahon. And as that was coming across, you were talking about how in the 80s, a lot of the TV shows had very, very family values, very moral based. Like, I even remember, like, the He-Man cartoon, and at the end, Adam of Eternity would pop up and go, on today's episode, and he would do a little kind of moral tale about what you saw and where it came from. We had family ties, which is crazy looking back to think Michael J. Fox played a young Republican and he was beloved, and he was a young Republican, a capitalist. But we seem to have changed through the 90s. And I remember Howard Stern coming in and the shock jock and the MTV culture. And even I'm a massive pro wrestling fan, the extreme attitude era in wrestling. And suddenly things started to turn round away from family values. And I know you've spoken about that seems to have had a massive impact.
No, 100%. That's a big shift. And like I said, there's a generation that doesn't know how things used to be. They grew up with social media and these kind of quick clips of just kind of watching stuff that's entertainment, and they scroll and they swipe and they do it all in this tiny little device, instead of actually sitting around with their family, laughing together, talking about stuff, and having these shared values that came from, it was entertainment, but it was valuable and it taught things to people. And it even gave them outside perspectives. We had these after school specials that we would watch, that were just these quick little cartoons and stuff that would come on TV. And it was just kind of like, hey, don't be a bully. Hey, smoking's bad. Hey, help your mom out around the house or whatever. It was like good stuff. And I guess it was because at the time, TV and the people responsible for the TV and what was being shown, they were still coming out of that 1950s, 1960s kind of era where like family was what it was, was really important. And they had those values there. And so when they chose a show to show to people, they wanted to make sure that it was a show that added value. And then, like you said, it took a nosedive sometime in the 90s. It really became more about the entertainment factor than the value factor. And now it's just gotten to a place where it's as long as we can just, they can keep you on your phone swiping, or just watching the next YouTube clip, so that you can watch more ads and stuff. It's had a major shift. And one of the things that we want to bring back with the Foundry actually is valuetainment. So we have things that are not just educational videos, but things that are actually like, it's entertaining, but it's also adding that value to where like you watch that with yourself or with your family and you go, man, like that's awesome. Like I want to meet these guys. I want to be like these guys. I want to, model myself after some of the things that are going on. We've got to bring that back. Absolutely.
Definitely. And Chris has rejoined us as well, talking about welcoming things back. Chris has managed to jump back into the world.
It seems like I've returned and you guys have sorted the world out. So
Well, what's funny, Chris, is that as soon as you started talking about Jesus and stuff, like like your internet went out. So I think the devil is after you, man.
The devil's after me.
You got to have the holy man come by and bless your house or something. I don't know.
This is, yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I have, one of those instances where, sometimes the internet drops out and you go, oh, I can fix this. And then it's just like nothing is working and it would not connect. My phone,
Yeah.
I'm just using my phone to message Ali saying, I can't go on, but that's working fine. You go, how?
Yeah.
Definitely the devil.
I wanted to pick up on something, though, that we kind of left off on, talking about religion real quick. I meet a lot of guys that say, like, I don't want to go to church, but I want my kids to go because I want them to learn those fundamentals and those lessons and stuff like that. Because they recognize that there's good things, that are taught in church, even if they don't believe the whole thing. But I think guys have really got to challenge themselves on, like, what do you believe? Like, in the world in which you live, what is your worldview? What do you really believe? Because if Jesus is real, if God's real, if there is really some spiritual, elements at play here, if that's true, it changes everything. And, I think guys want to be good and moral and wholesome and tough and, do good for their family. And that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But I think guys have really got to get to the point where they go, I believe this or I don't believe this. This makes sense to me or it doesn't make sense. And I think guys have got to get pressured, to do that, because I think this idea that we're just going to send people off to church and they're going to, somehow develop this moral. Look, I'm telling you, people at church will get taken for a ride just like anybody else, just like politics. Churches can become corrupt, religion can become corrupt. And so guys have really got to think, what do I believe? And they've got to get firm in that. And I think that should be the purpose of, if you're going to go someplace, it really ought to be to build up what you believe or help you understand what you believe a little bit more, if that makes sense.
So, yeah. So I think, what I would say is it's a very hard thing to get your head around, the traditional, the old white guy in the clouds with the grey beard. And it's quite difficult to get your head around that, because it seems silly, right? Like,
yeah,
even to somebody who's a Christian, you would have to say that seems a little silly, okay?
Yeah.
But when you see, as in the UK, when you see the direction that life has taken, when people have abandoned to some extent the church, you do have to say to yourself, maybe we better just go to church, because the way we're heading is not a good way.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. Yeah, it's better than where we're going.
So that's what I think. And like I say, I think if you just live by, I mean, I've got some friends locally, 4 brothers who are all grew up in church. Mum and dad go to church, and they still go to church. The 4 best people that I know, they're just solid guys, family guys, no nonsense, and just straight shoot, all have a good life. Bizarrely, we always say, like, the luckiest people. And there's a classic Scottish saying, if you fell in the Clyde, you'd come out with a salmon in his mouth. And that's that's the way they are. They seem to have the rub of the green all the time, and you go, is that a coincidence, or is there something else happening here? Because they, like, genuinely the luckiest people.
Yeah.
And but like I say, just really nice, just awesome guys. Family, parents are good people. And we have we've had conversations in the past, after maybe 1 or 2 years, the conversations become interesting. They do get interesting. So yeah, it's
well, I've heard that before, and I think it's, as far as whether or not it has something to do with it, I think so. It would have to. My thought is, if it's true, if there is some kind of spiritual plane of existence that is at work, whether we fully understand it or not, I think the more we understand how that works, understand those principles, and live by those principles, it's going to have an impact on our life. It just is. And I think that's the kind of the proof that a lot of people are, looking for.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I would, I've thought about this so many times in my head, about like, when you're having a reflective day, whether it's whatever, a birthday or a celebration, or friends who have died, or whatever it is, and you're having a reflective day and you think about life and the meaning of everything and all this stuff, and you think about, what is there? What is this? What is it? The general thoughts. And you think there has to be something, because everything, it just, there's nothing else makes sense. If you just look at everything, you go, to me, what I would say is something, me and Ali have talked about this before, is there's been certain things have happened in my life where you go, there's just no way that that's circumstance or coincidence. Somebody's looking after me somewhere. And I've said this before, 2 or 3 instances, maybe more than that, maybe 3 or 4 instances where you genuinely could pinpoint and go, there's no way that happens without somebody looking after me. It just doesn't. And that's the kind of thing, when so I believe in something. I just don't know what that something is. It's the idea of the traditional, the old guy with the grey beard.
I don't think it works. I don't think it looks like that. I mean, Mike, it's somebody did a good job painting that. But I tell you what, though, like the old depictions of God in the clouds. I mean, God was yoked. He was just like massive. That was, at least they got that part right.
I wonder if Jocko's God. Yeah. That what's going on.
Good LP.
That's what that is. But yeah, it's a good
LP.
It's an interesting conversation for sure. And I don't think I don't think people's lives would get worse if they had a little more faith, and lived a little bit more Christian lives. I don't think the life would become worse. I think the life would become better.
Yeah.
And I think
for sure. I mean, like if I recognize that you guys, let's say we all disagreed on political stuff, like really hard stuff. I would still have this understanding that I think you guys are eternal spirits, and that we have a destiny that's hopefully bound together in some kind of way. That you're more than just some dude across the pond that's arguing with me. And that changes my perspective about how I think about you. It changes my perspective about how I think about everybody. And even when I'm arguing with people on the internet, which I try not to do, but if I am, I try to think like that's somebody made in the image of God. Watch my step. Be careful, Mike. And that just changes how I think about things. So makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we've got I've got a niece who's 4 years old, and I've said so many times, she has been here before. There is no way she has not been a person before. And I know everybody says these things about, she's been here before.
Kids are so smart.
She has been here before. She is way too smart and knows way too many things to have not been alive before. It's just like, that's, and my nephew's not like that. She is. She has been here before.
Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast,
Yeah, he's 9, so I don't think he does. One day maybe. But yeah, she has been here before. And it's those things where you do go, is there something else?
Yeah.
Because that, whether, like I say, whether I believe everything, you go, well, maybe not. But those things make you go, whew. Something doesn't make sense, because this just doesn't, some things just don't, some things feel right and some things don't feel right. And that's one of those things where like I say, with certain instances where I go, somebody's looking after me. This is not, and it feels right. Whereas, that's my take. I believe in something. I'm just not entirely sure what that something is, but somebody looks after me, and that much I'm sure. So that's quite cool. Man. Yeah,
that's good.
But yeah, looks like I joined. I rejoined in time.
You did indeed. Just on that, I know we said we kind of keep you for about an hour, Mike, and we're heading on to that. So just as we start to wind down, first of all, again, thank you for a great conversation and giving up your time to join 2 idiot Scotsmen that love to talk. So thank you very much for that. But just in terms of, you mentioned a few of your projects and the things you've got going on. If you just want to give them all a shout out, and we can add this in the notes as well, so we can send some people your way that have, listened and interested in what you're doing out over there in America.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a good conversation, guys. And, if we get a chance to do this again, it'd be awesome. I'd love to, meet you guys in person. Do you guys actually live pretty close to each other or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, we literally live like 3 or 4 miles apart.
Everything in Scotland is quite close.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. No, that's cool. So, one of these, it's on my dream list of places to visit. So
man.
if I do, I'll get.
If you hear, for sure, give us a shout, and we'll we'll show you some sites.
That'd be awesome. So yeah, a couple of things I got going on. Wolf and Iron is probably how you guys know me the most. wolfandiron.com. And so that's where we have the blog, the podcast, and we do beard oils and various things like that. And just all kinds of different ways to connect with guys and help them to grow to be men, with the ultimate goal of kind of getting them over into the Foundry, which we kind of talked a little bit about. I've also got another project that's been going on for a few years now, maybe almost 6 years now, called Rustic and Main, like Main Street. And we actually make wedding rings, which is kind of weird. We have these two totally different businesses, but we make wedding rings out of a lot of historic materials, and stuff that's like really sentimental to the people who wear them. We actually have a lot of Scottish whiskey barrels and stuff, here, and people, special request things. And so we curate a lot of the materials, and I'm talking stuff from like old battleships, whiskey barrels, like I said, old rifle stocks, various things like that, stuff that guys like, and we put those into a ring and always try to tell a story. And so that's another business of ours that we try to promote. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to hear people's stories and to connect with people's sentimental objects and then be able to put those into something they can wear. It's awesome.
That
Yeah,
sounds
that's
incredible.
cool.
That's cool. I know you've also wrote a book called Tending the Fire.
Right.
Which is available on Wolf and Iron on your website.
Yeah, it's available on Wolf and Iron. Yep, you can go there and get a signed copy, or you can go to Amazon and order it from there.
I would
we'll get
a signed copy. Yeah, that sounds cool. I like that.
Nice.
Me and Chris like our signed copies when we've spoke to people. It's always nice when you've spoke to someone and then buy the product from them and get it signed. It's always, Amazon's great and it's massively convenient, but when you can get it direct from the source and get it signed, it's always nicer. Plus, it means Jeff Bezos probably doesn't get his cut, which also pleases me greatly. Cool. Well, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a really good conversation. We would love to do this again. If we can arrange at some point next year, we can jump back in and continue this conversation. Who knows where the world would be in another 6-8 months' time? It could be very interesting. But thank you very much for your time. We really enjoyed it. And I think we can call episode 69 of the Silly Goose podcast with Mike Yarborough from Wolf and Iron, Rustic and Main, done and dusted.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.